I first started playing in a brass band for the very first time at the age of 46, 11 years ago, when Fountain City started. At our first rehearsal, the E-flat soprano cornet part was played on a piccolo trumpet. The tuba section was 2 double C tubas and 2 F tubas. The tenor horn section had 1 French horn in it and 3 converted trumpet players. It was a humble beginning. It started all with a very world-class euphonium player, and our principal euphonium player, Lee Harrelson, when he literally flattened Helen Tyler, who's a world-class baritone horn player, who was at the time was in the Bode Richardson band, who was in Ithaca in Finland. He was coming out of the men's room in a hurry, and he ran her down. And she said, "Is this how you pick up men?" Typical euphonium player, you know, response. But they became friends during that week, and he went to NABA in 2003, and was just, as a euphonium player, said, "Wow, all these euphonium parts, this is amazing. I want to start a brass band." He was a graduate student at the time, University of Missouri, Kansas City. He did it as part of his graduate, basically, project, and started that brass band. And we started competing. We've won four straight NABA championships at one point. High point was in 2009, when we were the first American band to ever win any kind of championship on British soil at the Scottish Open in 2009. We've won the U.S. Open I don't know how many times. So it's been a great ride. I can tell you why as a pedagogue. I'm the professor of tuba at the University of Kansas for some 34 years now. What excites me about brass banding in America and this opportunity for basically advancing the art form, not only of brass banding but our instruments, is that if you want to be an orchestral tubist, you should not walk, you should run to play a B-flat part in a brass band. I'll tell you why in a second. If you want to be a solo euphonium player like Stephen Meade, you ought to run to try to play in the euphonium section, especially the solo euphonium part in a brass band. If you want to be a solo tubist like Pat Sheridan, you should try your darndest to be a solo E-flat player in a brass band. It's that demanding and that rewarding. Why it's been a passion in my, the second half of my career, I can tell you why, because I've never found anything this challenging and this rewarding. We have people sitting in this room who have been in brass bands since they were probably, I don't know, 6 years old. David, I don't know, when did you start? What age were you?
8.
8 years old. 8 years old. In the UK and elsewhere on this globe, kids start in local youth bands and work their way up. They're in competitions from the time that they're 8 years old on up. They work through the system, and of course the cream rises to the top to work and to be able to play in the VASA. But there's a place for everyone. Community players, it's such an inclusive community. It's a wonderful thing. But what I love about it as a teacher, for those who are students who want to be a professional player on the tuba and euphonium, is that by doing this brass band experience and being challenged all the time, being in competitions, you become what I call battle tested. When, you know, basically clipping a note, at least in a championship section, clipping a note perhaps might be the difference between first and second. These kinds of things make you very comfortable at putting yourself into kinds of situations that you need to be professional on our instrument, in auditions, in performance situations. And so when I can have my students sub with our band, I'm so excited because they get to see a little piece of what it's like. The music is so rewarding as well. It's fun. You play all kinds of music. Sometimes it's kind of schlock. Sometimes it's these incredibly difficult test pieces and everything in between. But guess what? That's what's like playing in a symphony orchestra, playing Pops concerts. Okay? You spend part of your time playing piano so that you get to play them all or two once in a while. That's our world that we live in. So brass bands are no different. So I'd like to just briefly take you through some pedagogical differences. I very quickly, because I didn't know that we were going to have PowerPoint even available, is it just quickly before my tuba ensemble concert on Thursday night, quickly Xerox some things, because seeing is believing with some of the test pieces here. And I'm a tech dinosaur, so I hope I don't screw this up. But take you through a little bit about what we do. So I hope that's going to work. Is that in a traditional British brass band, is that we have stayed all through these years through the traditional sax horn alternating E-flat, B-flat setup. You're wondering why I'm not going to give you a brass band lesson because there's people in here that could do a much better job. But mainly is it because it started out with community people and miners, cavalry bands, and textile workers and things. So you can move from one instrument to the next and never have to learn new fingerings. That's why. But all instruments in a brass band connect to each other, not only within the section, but to the section that is sonically or in score order above them and below. So that's why I'm going to show you a little bit about how the instruments work, but also the pedagogy of what the typical parts are. Is so, for me, and I'm not saying that if you have a brass band, you have to use the E-flat tuba or you have to use the B-flat tuba, but I'll show you why that in Great Britain and in some bands like ours, we tend to like that. We think it's the right color, the right tool for the job. But let me let you just listen in that regard. Here's our band in '07 on our first CD called Celebration. Good old typical British march called ORB that I really like. Here's us on double C tubas. So here is us, if I could hopefully can find this. Here we go. Here's from last year's piece by Jan van der Roos called Albion. Here's us now on B-flat tubas. And let me get to it. Tell the difference, can't you, between the darker sound, B-flats and B-flats. Great. So continue on, though. I'm sure you've got that little handout, and I've just kind of done a potpourri of different things. And first is typical youth technique. This is from our piece that we played on NABA. Coming in second to Princeton by less than a point.
You're so bad.
It's happened. We've come in second by less than a point the last 3 years. It seems to be a tradition lately. Indeed, typical, as you can see in the part there, of course, treble clef. This piece called Breath of Souls by Paul Lovett Cooper. And my phone keeps cutting out, so you're wondering why all of a sudden I'm going, this is the Corey Band, not a bad band from Wales in the UK. And let me just find it. Sorry, all of a sudden, here we go, I hope. Well, I said that, and all of a sudden I'm drawing a blank. Okay. I'm going to find it, don't worry. I hope. All right, you can see there, I wouldn't skip over that unless I can't see to find it. We don't have that much time. But if you look at the euphonium part and the baritone part, that's at 160 quarter note. It's pretty typical. I think, David, you played this one, right? Yeah. That's not atypical of a euphonium technique part, where you really have to have blazing technique. And if you turn the page, you can see how it continues on. It's very much like it's almost like a pop commercial song all the way through, but with parts that you can't believe. It's almost like euphonium baritone parts, or the lead guitar player, I guess you could say. And so you continue on. You can see that type of demand stuff. This is the next thing I would like to show you a little bit in terms of is for tuba, for E-flat tuba and B-flat tuba. Is from what was the set piece, means that every band has to play the same part. This is the part at letter G. You can see there's a variation that you can recognize the notes from the famous Nimrod variation. Mark Ellery's not with us today, but if he was, he could speak what a really finely crafted piece. And I'm going to have to find it, but here we go. I've got the beginning. If you don't mind me skipping ahead, sorry about that. Okay. There you go. This is G coming. So you can see the E-flat part is, I was principal B-flat in our band for 7 years. And then I moved up to principal E-flat 2 seasons ago, and I finally got to play a melody. It's great. But the solo E-flat, the E-flat tuba parts, both technically and that, are a real, basically, connection to the euphonium and baritone sections. So you play a lot of melodic and heavily technical material. The solo E-flat player, also the first chair player, almost every test piece has some type of solo or cadenza in which they kind of test the metal of your first chair player. So if you want to be a soloist, this is an amazing way to do it. The range of it, of the E-flat parts, goes all the way down to the pedal register, up to high F, F sharp, G, just as a way of using that as a color. So sometimes you're basically almost like the third and fourth euphoniums. Other times you're playing a real tuba part in which you're complementing the B-flat tubas as a section, and it's a real rewarding part as a result. Okay? So I know I want to not to run out of time, just to give you this thumbnail sketch. So again, as a pedagogue, what I'm seeing in terms of my students is if they're playing in a brass band and they're able to actually get experience in both of these tuba sections or euphonium sections, baritone or euphonium actually, is that they're receiving a really well-versed, totally detailed challenge of all types of playing. Everything from the most lyrical to the most technical, as well as ranges. So it's like I say, it's just as a teacher, it's something I believe in seriously. So continue on. The next one we have is kind of we're going to get to eventually here is the euphonium solo. This is also from the Eldar. And there's just a lovely, lovely euphonium solo. particularly, really plays very much of a role akin to the principal cello in a major symphony orchestra, except I would say, in terms of the number of solos, it's more like being concertmaster. It's that, for euphonium writing and the brass band, the euphonium is in many ways even more prominent than sometimes the solo cornet in terms of solos. There's a lot of solo cornet solos, don't get me wrong. But if you're a euphonium player, you haven't participated in brass band before, I can tell you that for euphonium players, this is why so many great players have come out of the UK. It's not because of the water, or even the beer, which I it's because of this experience. Now I'm going to, because we've only got a few minutes of that, but if you look on the last page, you'll see a typical writing. We're talking about orchestral players. Typical writing in, for the low part, the B-flat tuba parts. Why is it great training for being an orchestral player? First of all, in the B-flat parts, it's very much playing the same role as you would in an orchestra or in a wind band, except a lot more challenging. I can tell you that playing a B-flat tuba part in a brass band on these championship test pieces makes playing Prokofiev 5 like a walk in the park. You will have no problems playing typical major orchestral repertoire if you've been playing B-flat tuba parts in the brass band. First of all, it uses the pedal register extensively. A piece called Dreams by Bertrand Morton. The lowest note is a pedal E that you have to do in octaves. It has to be perfectly in tune. That goes from pianissimo to triple F, a pedal E. Makes pedal C's and B flats and A flats seem like nothing, right? I mean, that happens all the time in brass band writing. You can see from the part, this is from Albion, that it uses the extensive of the low register. It's power playing, except that also that there's a lot of technical playing that's thrown into it. I remember I had a very kind of testy exchange with one of my composer friends in Kansas when I said, it was a doctoral exam of one of my tubists when I made the claim, and I said, very rightly so, well, actually, the brass band test pieces are much more difficult than the Henneman Symphony tuba part. And he took great umbrage at that, but he was wrong. They are. So again, if you want that kind of experience, you're trying to be an orchestral player, I cannot think of a better place to. Also, you're thinking, well, it's a B-flat tuba, man. If I live in a band that uses B-flat tubas, that's going to be different. Well, by the way, I'd like to point out that that's what I love about when I play the B-flat tuba, is it's in treble clef, so C is open. I just felt like I was playing my C tuba all the time, except in treble clef. So it works great. But I'm going to tell you that, indeed, if you're starting a brass band, don't be all hung up about what horn you're playing. We played double C tubas and read the C tuba parts in tenor clef. It was great for the brain to do. But I can tell you that, just like Steve is saying, if you get into this, what it's going to do from a pedagogical standpoint, in my opinion, here in North America, is what we'll do if brass bands explode like we hope they will, is it will give American brass players a similar type of experience, whether they end up being professional players or not. It's a lifetime of autotelic experience. You know what autotelic experience are? It's when you get lost into something, like you're painting, you're playing music, where it becomes so rewarding that you're so passionate about it, you get totally lost. It gives you that experience from the time that you're 8 years old to the time to the grave. For professional players, it advances brass playing in terms of really putting us in experiences that makes us successful. So I am drinking the Kool-Aid as an educator because I want my students to have this experience because it will give them a leg up on people who are not participating. So I would say too, yes, start your own brass band. Do whatever you can do to get in some type of brass band experience. And if it's not because you think it's a great, it is. It's the most wonderful. There's nothing like, I can tell you, sitting in a tuba section, playing some of those pieces, the sound, that's what hooked me. It's just the sound of it. I just love it. I can't get enough. And humans are competitive. I have to say that hearing our name called in 2009 at the Scottish Open, you know, was as good as any drug that you could possibly And, you know, it's like rugby. We try to musically beat the hell out of each other, and then we go to the pub afterward and sing songs. So I would just say to you, you know, indeed, there are a lot of reasons, both educationally, both just humanly enjoyment, as well as professional reasons that you want to try to pursue. Is there any questions for Steve and I that you would like to do before we have to go?
As far as reading the parts on different keys of tuba, and then they're actually written for.
Right.
Any ideas on transpositions on how you said something about tenor clef just a second ago on C tuba.
Right. If you write B flat parts on C tuba and read them in tenor clef, it works out just great. It's down a step. Treble clef down a step, which is was great for my mind. I have to admit, when it was in a bad key, there were brain cells hitting the floor. Boy, but it was great for my tenor clef. But you can do it. You know, nowadays, and technology is getting easier and easier. Pretty soon, you're going to be able to, if you can't already, scan in a part and have it automatically transposed. Bang! You know, so there's that. You know, there's really not that much of a concern. Yeah. Because our band's really done it. Like I say, we started with F's and C's, then we had American style E flats and C's, and then we went totally Brit. The 981s, E flats, and the Besson B flats, which I also, I almost forgot, I need to thank Besson Tubas and through Buffet Crampon Group USA for having me come out, so thanks to them. I'm glad I said Besson, so I reminded myself that. Yeah, great question. Anything else?
How do you get the trumpet professors on board with their kids playing cornets and the horns, theirs playing alto?
This is the challenge at my school, like my horn professor. It's certainly a hard sell. I would say this, and I don't know if Steve agrees with me or not. I would say if at the beginning that you, for instance, the River City Brass Band has horns. If you can't do tenor horn, start with 4 horns. It's better than not starting at all. For instance, I'm working with my wind ensemble director to have a brass band component in which they use the horns, but play brass band music as part of the wind ensemble experience at the University of Kansas. Because I know that's a battle I can't win right now. Okay? I told you that our tenor horn, we found, for instance, that it was better to take really good cornet trumpet players who were willing to switch versus trying to convince horn players that they ought to play tenor horn. So there's a lot of different ways to skin that cat, yes. But trumpet, actually, playing cornet makes a trumpet player better. It really does. I think most pedagogues would agree with you. The free blowingness of the cornet makes their trumpet player, it gives them a darker sound. Isn't it true that like the last 3 or 4 principal players in London Symphony were in Black Dyke, with solo cornet and Black Dyke? Yeah. That's a pretty good example. I use that one a lot with band directors. Yeah.
I mean, besides River City or professional?
Professional brass bands in America? Well, Battle Creek, which is kind of an all-star band that gets together like 2 or 3 times a year. But yes, that's professional. Yes. The rest of it is volunteer groups like we are. Yes. Yeah. And I've gladly paid some money to go compete at times. We try to do gigs to pay for the cost of things, but sometimes when we can't get enough money, I think I paid $2,500 one time for a tour to the UK. And some of my freelance friends in Kansas City looked at me like I was out of my mind. And so some people don't get that. I do it because it's a passion. I play a lot of free gigs because I'm a university professor at the university every year. And I thought, well, now I'm just choosing the play free gigs that I love. You know, so, I mean, the volunteer aspect, that doesn't mean though that every band is going to cost you that kind of money. Like for instance, our band is trying to get an endowment and things, so those things are paid for eventually. But every band is slightly different. Yeah. The volunteer aspect is, you know, is something that's kind of part of the brass band tradition, and that you're playing for passion. You're not playing to make a buck. And it's actually kind of been very rewarding in that aspect, that people are willing not to be looking at the clock. Oh God, you know, rehearsal says it has to end it. You know, during NAVA Hell Week and during US Open week preparations, we rehearsed every single night for 4 to 5 hours. And there's not a single complaint. Everybody wants to be there. Everybody. And, yeah, I'm in great shape after those weeks.
Just on the point about the different clefs and everything, most British publishers will send you bass clef parts for tubes and frames anyway, if you ask.
That's true.
You mentioned the financial component. I play in the J&B band. I'm the president of the band. And if you're with the university, a lot of times you can treat it as a club and register it with your
For
club
students
at the
and
university. So the students run the organization, and you can fundraise through that. You can also get money from your school music or your college or things like that. But
Exactly.
like you guys, we also have to pay NAPA at least part of it each year.
Yeah. Since we're not a student group, we can't do that. But yeah, student groups can go through their student senate monies and become an official organization, student organization, and get paid just like the, you know, the Frank Zappa Music Club and all that kind of stuff. That's great. Well, I know we're getting very close to 1 o'clock, and we don't want to run into someone else's time. On behalf of Steve and award-winning Princeton band. Great. First year championship section, they won this. That's really something. It's really something. It was a real dogfight this year. And that's so good for American banding. It's so great. It's really great. It's totally taken off. Will Hess back there has been in our band in 3 different sections, right, Will? Yeah. Yeah, he's seen it from the beginning as well. All I can say to you is that I hope you saw something today that you could, or heard something that you really like, and best of luck to everyone. Thank you.